With Lululemon, the real gift happens when they're living in it. When you give the fan favorite everywhere belt bag, the real gift is... And when the ultra-soothing Rest Feel slides are the gift, you're really giving them... This holiday, Lululemon makes it easy to give little luxuries that go beyond. Open the moment. Shop now at Lululemon.com.
His code name's Jackal. He's an exceptional assassin.
Streaming now on Peacock.
He will kill again, unless we stop him.
Academy Award winner Eddie Redmayne.
You're paying me to kill him. I am charging you for getting away.
The Jackal's here. Look at the exits.
BAFTA Award winner Lashana Lynch.
I will find him, and I will kill him myself.
I like to win.
So do I.
The Day of the Jackal. Streaming now, only on Peacock.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/campaign to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
Welcome to Book Talk for Book Talk, a podcast where we deep dive into the writing of your favorite novels.
This is Jack.
And I'm Amy.
In Season 1, we explored Sarah J. Maas's A Court of Thorns and Roses. In our post-season content, we look forward to sharing listener feedback and thoughts we received over the last 8 weeks, as well as listener content from some special guests.
The views expressed by the hosts and guests are entirely their own and in no way represent the thoughts or intentions of the original author. This podcast is a discussion shared to spark thought and conversation on the characters and themes of this novel.
Though the hosts speak mostly within the constraints of this book, series spoilers may be discussed with or without warning. Explicit language as well as themes of sex, violence, abuse, and depression will reoccur throughout this podcast. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome to this special episode of Book Talk for Book Talk. We have today a special guest, our friend, my roommate, Nikole. Welcome, Nikole. Yay!
Hello, everyone. Thank you both for having me. Long-time fan, first-time talker.
Yes, except for all the times when we talk with you off the podcast about the book.
Sure. And when I listen to the podcast and then I'm like, well, here's what I think. I do talk to some podcasts. Yours, Hysteria. I just have conversations.
And also, Nikole brings great insight. She is part of our writing group and love every single suggestion she always brings. So she is a fellow writer and has, the natural instinct.
I would say that absolutely is how I would describe myself. Just like a primal writer. Just like
yes.
Naturally, instinctively, just like, how can I manipulate these words? But yeah, I'm a writer, and you can follow me on Twitter at NicoleZ, NiKolez, and then same handle on Instagram.
Love it. Love it. So we'll just jump right in.
When was the first time you read ACOTAR, and what were your initial thoughts?
So my first time I read ACOTAR was basically the week you guys launched your pilot or your podcast. You guys were telling me about the book series, and I was like, oh, I want to be a nice friend and support your podcast, even though I hadn't read the series yet. And I probably got like 6 minutes in, and I was like, nope, I need to listen to the books. And then so I did. And so I basically just in the last few months have listened to the first 3 books.
Yeah, you made great time on them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You powered through them like we all do the first time.
Yeah, we were definitely surprised when you're like, yeah, I just finished.
Yeah.
Every single time I was like, oh, I finished this first book. Oh my God. And then the second book, oh, I got to the soup scene. Oh my God, already here.
Yeah. Yeah, she's painting, I'm painting, other things are happening to her, not happening to me. Those conversations.
I loved getting your initial reactions for all of that. So what were your initial thoughts when you read it? Because I know we heard your initial thoughts, but tell the listeners.
My initial thoughts had initial thoughts, because what I felt for like the first act and then the second act and third act kind of changed so drastically that even though I really totally enjoyed the book, totally enjoyed the series, I did feel super betrayed at the end, like by the author. Like, you made me feel so many. I felt like I was more betrayed than Feyre was, because she had like hot man to make her feel better. I just had like this like plushie of Jigglypuff. So I know we have different coping mechanisms. I felt pretty betrayed at the end, but not in a way that made me feel mad, but in a way that made me feel like, oh boy, this next book is gonna be a doozy. You know, that's how I felt.
So did your instincts, like, did you go, no, oh yes, Farrah's gonna eventually become a fairy, like this is where it's heading?
No. That was a surprise. I guess the only way for this love story in a world like this to exist is with immortality. So I guess that I thought that there was eventually going to be that conversation, but I definitely didn't think that was going to be the result of this book or the result of these battles.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty fair. Like, it happens, if you look in this grand scheme of things, of like a multi-book series, her becoming a fairy does happen relatively early on, considering it's just the end of the first book.
Right. It's not like Twilight, where it drags out for 3 or 4 books before she becomes immortal.
It wasn't really a point of conversation as much as it could have been.
There weren't really conversations.
Right. There was no way for that to happen, right?
Right.
Oh yeah, because she was in a mountain the whole time.
Well, because that science doesn't exist in this world, you know? Like, they didn't know this was possible, I don't think, until they were suddenly like, with my powers combined, and they all put their rings out, and then they Captain Planet her back to life. That's the visual that I'm going to create. But it's kind of what happened.
Yes.
And she got these elements.
I need the fan art of like all the High Lords as various Captain Planets.
The rings sticking out.
We're the Planeteers, making something come true.
You can be one too.
Yeah, because polluting in something is not the way. Anyway, so what were your first impressions of Farrah and Tamlin during your first time reading ACOTAR? And, you know, no judgment. We all liked Tamlin the first time, or maybe you didn't.
I think that this is like my first intro to. I think this book is intro to fairy porn. Like, you know, it's like not 101. It's like 100. You know, like you're easing into it. And so that's kind of what I was thinking going into this book. And, you know, our first interaction with him, in my head, the visual I have is of a Wendigo.
Oh.
You know, like in, I think it's some indigenous cultures, and like up in like Minnesota, up north, they have these Wendigo is this like mystical creature with like a massive humanoid body and deer head. It's this terrifying thing. And so like that's the visual I had of him when we first see Tamlin. And so even though he becomes attractive pretty quickly after that, I still had that like vibe about him, that like, why does he transform into something so menacing and awful, you know? But then after that, and I definitely was rooting for them to fall in love, you know? Yeah. But also very early on, I felt that there were so many parallels to Beauty and the Beast, which is just like, you know, how not to treat domestic violence, you know, like, because like Beauty and the Beast is just Stockholm Syndrome. It's like, there's like literally a line in the new movie where it's like, I think she'll never leave me. And it's like, she's in a cage, brah.
She can't leave.
She can't leave. Even when you're supposed to be falling in love with Tamlin, I definitely felt like the fact that he literally turns into a beast, that she's kidnapped, she can't leave, and the fact that he has this mask hiding his identity, or like hiding who he really is, I definitely felt apprehensive about him. But also they kept telling me he was a babe, so like it was conflicting.
Yeah, it's kind of like you never had an opportunity for them. I mean, they never had an opportunity to be on even playing field.
No. And it's like we said a few minutes ago, like they never really have conversations, let alone their future would be like. They don't have a conversation about what we should do tomorrow. It's always like she would see him going somewhere and she would be like, I want to exist too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they didn't chat enough. I'm a big fan of chatting.
That was like one thing Amy talked about also on the podcast, is like they never talk when they have issues. It just goes straight to sex with them.
Yes, and I agree. I listened to that episode recently, and I agree. And that's kind of what happens as soon as they come back from the wall. They don't talk. And then there's like, I don't know if it's the end of this book or the beginning of the next book, but something along the lines of, you know, he knew I was mad and neglected, so he had sex with me extra. You know, like that's like a sentence. Like she said it better than that.
But the sentiment was there.
That's the sentiment. You know, like I'll make up for it you later with something physical.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely is a huge theme in the second book, A Court of Mist and Fury, that he makes up for things with sex, whether he gets mad or he neglects her and she gets mad.
Yeah.
But like, what if it's really good sex?
If that solves problems, then like let's explore that, because there's a lot of conflict in this book series. If
this is how we do world peace,
Tamlin, if his dick is world peace,
then him and Rhys, I will pay for that.
Let's explore it.
They should explore their healing together.
That's all I'm saying.
How would you characterize Feyre and Tamlin's love story?
Yeah, now that I have like a fuller picture of it, I would say it's very Stockholm. It's very domestic violence adjacent. It has, I mean, not even adjacent, because she gets hurt. Like,
yeah,
there's so many, yeah, it's a very uncomfortable relationship when you are into the second book and you start to be able to look at things removing yourself from how you felt in the first book. Because for the first two-thirds of the first book, I did see a future for them. You know, like he can change, she can get stronger, she can melt his heart, you know, like those are which is, I guess, kind of what happens, because he has an unbreakable heart. But yeah, I was rooting for them at some point.
Yeah, so in the context of the first book, though, because, you know, like season 1 is still just ACOTAR.
Totes.
How would you categorize like that relationship? Because I think that one definitely, everyone is in the exact same spot. We're all rooting for them in book 1.
Yeah, I'm rooting for them in book 1 for sure. But again, by the end of book 1, I think it has to do a lot with how little freedom Feyre really had in the first 2/3 of the book. But when she's under the mountain and you see like just how insanely strong this, and I can't emphasize enough, teenage young woman is. Like she's 19. Her brain has 6 years to finish forming. You know, like the strength that she shows, and then Tamlin's just constantly like, oh, I'm comfy in this chair. You know, like he just does so little. I think that made me end the book feeling so much differently I did than before she went to the mountain.
That makes sense. I remember feeling the same way in that. I was like, oh, you're not a great guy.
He had so many opportunities to show growth, to show compassion, to show like, oh, I've evolved. And he just never did.
I mean, it's kind of where, you know, who you are comes out in the toughest moments. And if you guys are going to like survive or thrive as a couple, it's going to come out in the toughest moments. And I think Sarah J. Maas did a great job with readers walking away from the book going, yay?
Yes, exactly. Lowercase y, lowercase a, lowercase y.
Yeah.
3 question marks.
Yeah.
What was the most interesting dynamic in the book for you? Like Feyre Tamlin, Nesta Feyre, Tamlin Lucien, Feyre Alice. I don't know. I don't like Alice, but
yeah, I have a thing against just like bark. Tree bark just grosses me out. No, that's not true. But I do feel that way about pine cones. Pine cones do gross me out. No, I think that there are a bunch of really interesting dynamics, and what made them so interesting is that they evolved, they changed, and like that's also nature of, you know, 2/3 of the book's characters being forced to lie for a good portion of the book. So you go through some character growth when you can suddenly be honest. And so I liked a lot of the conversations she had when she came back, with Alice, for example. Although I didn't like, you guys touched upon this in the podcasts, I don't like how people are always withholding information and then calling her dumb. It's like, this is not constructive in any way. None of y'all should have children.
Well, it's almost gaslighting, too, in some way.
Oh, it completely is. And it completely absolves them from the myriad of ways that they could have helped as well.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
But to answer your question, I think Lucien as a character, I think is really interesting because you find out bits and pieces about him throughout the series and even just throughout this book. And I think that he has such complex wants and feelings that he clearly denies himself out of loyalty. And like, you know, it's hard it's hard to say that I don't respect loyalty. I don't respect a lot of the decisions he makes, but I think that his dynamic with Feyre throughout the book was really interesting. And then I like how it continues to grow.
I really like one of the things you just said of like loyalty, and book 1, it touches on that, and I think book 2, that's a huge theme that Amy and I are going to be diving into more, just because Lucien, his loyalties are pushed to the 10th degree. Like, loyalties are tested, loyalties broken, and a lot of groundwork is done in book 1 for that.
Right, and you can start to see already, like, what are his loyalties to? It's to his High Lord. It's to people. It's to, not to his family, but it's not to his family. Like they are his family. Like he cares about the humans to an extent. Like you can see him having compassion, but also having, like you said, loyalty for these different things that he cares about. And how could that not cause problems eventually?
I think we only kind of get a glimpse of it in the first book, and we see it more in the second book, but I think Lucien has an equal, if not greater, loyalty to the Spring Court than I think Tamlin has. And he has a greater loyalty to the welfare of the Spring Court than he does to Tamlin, which is, I think, ultimately explains that complexity that he has.
Yeah, and you can see that with a lot of the choices. Lucien wants to fight, whether or not he's trying to like egg Feyre into like getting closer to Tamlin, or he's like telling Tamlin like, "What are you doing?" Like, he's willing to put in more effort, even in those regards, than Tamlin is.
Right. Even when he is pissed off and hates Feyre, he's willing to just be like, okay, gotta suck it up. Let's get this done.
Right. And he doesn't seem to show, and I could just be misremembering, but he doesn't seem to show hatred towards her and on a human level the way that Tamlin does in the beginning.
I don't know. I feel like Lucien definitely resents Feyre for existing in the first part. And I always interpreted it as like, you killed my friend, I hate you. But I'm wondering, as we're having this conversation, if maybe Lucien's resentment for her more embodied his friend Tamlin's lack of being able to accomplish anything. Like maybe, because in the early days, like Lucien does shit on Feyre. Like he almost lets her die. He is not a great guy to her, but now that we're talking about it, it's like he is fiercely loyal to Tamlin, and he probably absolutely hates seeing his best friend being so weak.
Right.
Yeah.
So in some way it's a misdirection of his resentment.
Yeah.
He's directing it at Feyre because he can't direct it at Tamlin.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe there's even a layer of being frustrated with himself for, letting Tamlin get to this desperate final hour of the curse or whatever. And he doesn't have the allies that he should because of the choices he made with like his court, and he's cursed, so he can't actually help the situation. So these men aren't they just have layers of emotions.
Layers of emotions that they're just not willing to get into.
Sounds like a lot of men I know.
Right? Instead of therapy, they should just buy Twitter.
We point out Rhysand breadcrumbs throughout ACOTAR before readers are even aware of Rhysand's existence. Were we reaching, or do you think SJM was intentional in her placement of references back to the High Lord of the Night Court?
No, I think it was definitely intentional. Those breadcrumbs, like, you guys definitely pointed out ones that, like, I didn't quite notice, and, like, I wouldn't have noticed because I had only read the first book. But, like, I think it was super intentional, and when she first meet Rhysand at that spring party or whatever, and the way that he's described as, like, the most beautiful person that she's ever seen, and, like, she's taken aback, and, like, that just felt very intentional, because she sees attractive, crazy fairies constantly, and so like this moment felt important, and I didn't know why at the time, obviously, but it definitely felt like there was weight there. And then obviously once under the mountain, you realize how big a part of the story he plays.
Right. And it felt like a betrayal, and why would she intentionally put that betrayal in there?
Yeah, we talked about, like, when Feyre said that, when I first was reading it first time, and Feyre said, like, it was the most beautiful man she's ever seen. I was like, oh my god, Feyre, your man. Like,
right.
Why are you saying that about another guy?
I did feel that at first as well, yeah. But then in my head, I just pictured a man so beautiful that, like, that's just what you have to say.
Like the guys that we saw at Disneyland?
Like the guys we saw at Disneyland. Yeah, fast pass to my heart.
Oh, fast pass to many things for me.
It's, excuse you, lightning lane. A lightning lane to your heart.
Okay. Yeah. Genie plus to my feelings.
Fall has officially started here in Los Angeles, and that means we finally get to do fall activities.
I have been counting down the days for when I can go to pumpkin patches, maybe even hit up an apple orchard, and I get to do all of it looking super cute in my Quince boyfriend sweater.
This weather is perfect for my dark academia vibes, and I'm so excited to bust out my washable silk blouse because you know I'm going to be taking pictures.
Quince is known for their Mongolian cashmere sweaters from $50. And that's not all. Quince has so many other amazing things on their website.
All of those items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands.
That includes leather jackets, cotton cardigans, soft denim. Like, my entire fall wardrobe is genuinely turning into Quince wardrobe.
By partnering directly with top factories and cutting out the cost of the middleman, we get savings as the customer.
One of my favorite parts about Quince is the fact that they only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices. And they still manage to get premium fabrics and finishes for that, luxury feeling for every item that they have.
Get cozy in Quince's high-quality wardrobe essentials. Go to quince.com/booktalk for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's Quince, QUINCE.com/booktalk, BOOKTALK, to get free shipping and 365-day returns. That's quince.com/booktalk.
What are some of the themes that we discussed that stood out to you? What are some insights that maybe you came up with because of that? And some examples are food is power, painting and the feminine, smash doors, and fair as the dough. So was there anything that we talked about that might have sparked anything for you?
I think that of all the ones that you guys talked about, the doorways definitely was my favorite. And I know doorways are always, it's like almost the obvious, but it's just like, I didn't think about it when I was reading. so like, I think that was like really obvious stuff. And then some, I don't know if it's a theme, but like just something I think about in the books is that she would sometimes become clean through magic. And we find out later that that's not actual feeling of clean. And so like there's a difference between magic clean and shower clean. And so I think about a lot just like, she got faked clean certain points throughout in the book, and it's like she didn't actually absolve herself of these certain things. Like Under the Mountain, Rhysand like cleans her at some point too, and it's just I don't know. It's just there's something like almost baptismal I'm missing there, but also just like she's not fully cleansed of what's happening. Like this is like a sheen.
Oh my God! How did Amy?
I know.
I love showers. I love showers so much.
I mean, you're right. Like baptism, like there's a baptismal thing about that. Her sins aren't clean. And that's during, like Amy talks about that as like her conversion period.
Right. And that might have been, that's either right before or right at the Rhysand time. It's either right before or right after she kills two Fae for a trial.
Yeah.
And so like, that haunts her more than I think most of the things she's done.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Oh my God.
I really love that. I'm going to have to go. So, of course, because I'm reading A Court of Mist and Fury, the first example I think of is from that book, and not A Court of Thorns and Roses. But are we okay if I say it anyway?
Yeah, yeah.
Because I feel like it's relevant. So after she steals the Book of Breathings from the Summer Court, and she and Amryn, almost die, they come up, the Water Wraiths rescue them, drop them off on the beach. They're covered in mud. Rhysand shows up and cleans them. But she doesn't feel clean. She feels really guilty about betraying. What's the Summer Court?
Helion? No, not Helion.
No, Tarquin.
Summer Daddy.
Tarquin. She feels really guilty about betraying Tarquin because she felt like they could have been friends. So I totally see what you're saying, Nikole, and I love that you brought this up because that's definitely something we need to look out for more.
Seriously, freaking genius. I'm so excited.
And it's seriously just because, like, for me, like, my portal, like, my doorway is a shower. Like, in the morning, the shower is what wakes me up, gets me ready for the day. The shower is what is like, all right, the day's behind me, I'm going to bed. So, like, it's very much just something I think about.
I love it. Yeah, thanks for sharing that.
The first time we read ACOTAR, we totally missed how Underneath the Mountain mirrors events from earlier in the book. The back end of the book mirrors the front end. So, like,
there's a lot of parallels.
Yeah. So how Rhysand has Farah painted reflects the way that Tamlin was painted during Calamai. Was there one mirror that you didn't realize from the first time you read ACOTAR that we discussed in the podcast? And is there one that we might have missed?
Yeah, like the obvious one to me was that the whole reason this whole thing started was because she is such an excellent hunter that, like, was like, I'm down to kill 2 animals. I'm gonna kill deer and a wolf. I don't care how many babies they have. And so that was like, that energy to me was definitely a big part of, like, her destroying that worm. Like, she was just like, it was survival mode. But to me, that was more just like character building for more than like foreshadowing. Yeah, there really wasn't any moments to me that struck out like that.
I think you just called one without realizing it.
I think you did too. I was just thinking that. She
starts the book killing 2 creatures and ends the book killing 2 creatures. She starts the book killing the wolf and the deer, and she ends the book killing those 2 innocent fae.
That's true. That's true.
That was you. You did that.
Oh, I'm going to take it one step further. There are also 2 things that die at the end of the book. Feyre, the doe, and Amarantha, who you could argue is a wolf, as a predator.
You could totally argue that.
Yeah, 100%.
Dang.
Good job, Nikole.
Good job, Nikole.
So one thing we also talk about is that Feyre has to convince herself that she loves Tamlin even more. Like, she has to increasingly convince herself that she's in love with Tamlin as the trials go on. What do you think about their dedication to one another by the end of the book, by the time they return to the Spring Court?
By the time they get back, I feel like the first thing that happens is they just, like, start boning, which is great because you haven't seen each other in a long time, but also, like, I don't know, I think that you should probably talk about all that trauma. I feel like they should have chatted. Just, yeah. And I felt like a part of me was like, oh no, Nikole, this is intro to fairy porn. This is romance. You're getting some romance. But then another part of me just kind of felt like Tamlin's just straight up he has complete freedom to be who I thought he was supposed to be. And he's not. And he just kind of seemed like he got what he wanted. He got what he needed. And he was done trying. Like he put a ring on it and he was out.
That's such an interesting way of putting it. Like, he was now free to be exactly what we wanted him to be. And instead, he goes in the complete opposite direction.
To be what he actually is.
To be what he is. Exactly. With no like, self-awareness. Like, because so many of the things, like, if when I read the book, I talk back to every character constantly. I'm a little sass monster. And so it's like, I want her to be like, well, I understand why you feel like you can't get work done if you're angry, but let's talk about what I want. Like he would say what he would demand. You can't leave because I can't worry. And it's like, that's the beginning of a conversation. Then you say, oh, I hear your concerns. Here's how we're going to address yours and we can address mine. Like, I'm couples counseling them now, but I just expected he's such an adult. He's an 1,000-year adult.
Yeah.
Which is another thing, which I never really fully am like, that's cool. Like, if you're hundreds of years old and you're dating a 19, 20-year-old, Rhysand too, it's like, what's going on? Have some life experiences.
Like, Jake Gyllenhaal was too old for Taylor Swift, and so then why is Rhysand and Tamlin okay?
Right. We tell people to date in their height bracket, date in your age bracket.
I don't know. I dabbled outside of my age bracket. I enjoyed it.
For vampires, it's complicated for me. Well, how far do I go? How old is too old? BC?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Did they hang out with Jesus? that are cool.
Right? Were you guys homies or, you know?
You kind of mentioned something about like just how quickly they jump back into sex. And I was just thinking about this where we don't really see Farrah. We don't get too much of like Farrah and Tamlin post. Oh, no, we do. Sorry. Like after the mountain, they're like they've won. They're in the bedroom and they bone, obviously. I'm just trying to imagine Farrah's mindset after months and months of being blacked out and not knowing what happened to her body. Like, I know she had paint on her body to determine, okay, I haven't been assaulted, but every single night is still a night that you don't know what happened. And you're trusting this fae that you don't entirely trust, Reese, to say, yeah, no, look at the paint. Nothing happened to you.
Right. Well, and then you're trusting this fae you used to trust that you're not sure you trust anymore and being like, yeah, you can bed me right now.
Yeah.
Right.
So formal.
And she's just murdered people. She's just died.
Yeah.
She's been starved. She hasn't taken her vitamins. Like, she's not in any way in a good physical or emotional place. You know?
Right.
Yeah. She hasn't seen the sun.
Yeah.
Right.
She does need vitamin D. Vitamins.
She does.
Mm-hmm. That's the vitamin D she needs.
Damn.
Yeah, I mean, to what extent is this her exhibiting the numbness that we see at the start of the second novel?
I think that's exactly it. And you know, even if all of this stuff with Tamlin, when she gets back, isn't, you know, unhealthy and physical rather than emotional, she has just experienced so much and died. Like, now she's become an immortal and she has powers maybe. Like, there's just so much that she's coping with that the idea that she'd be normal in any way right away is silly talk.
Amy and I have started saying, joking, but I think we can make a good argument for it and want to get your thoughts. Amarantha is actually a feminist icon.
Talk to me.
Okay. So she is the one fae who reveals Farrah's name as being like from the old fae. So she already is kind of giving Farrah power in a way. And then the fact that she doesn't really like manipulate her own sexuality. Like, Amarantha is really described as being modest and she's not really overt in that. Like, and she does talk about wanting to sleep with Tamlin and she obviously like abuses Reese. But she is also villainized, obviously, for many reasons. But she's also like a very powerful woman. Like, that's the first time we're getting a female character, not Alice, who's not Farrah, and is a strong woman in her own right who doesn't have to exert sexuality in order to desire sexuality.
I think that's very interesting. And she's definitely a strong, powerful character. But, like, she's very complex. And she's also, like, the only threat that, like, Hybern's, like, this ethereal thing, but, like, the only thing that they're maybe afraid of. And, I don't know. She's such a bad guy. I guess she's a feminist icon in the same way that Rita Repulsa is a feminist icon from the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Like, in that she was allowed to be so many different things that female characters aren't allowed to be. You know, and, you know, you could argue that her main, villains, the people that she did the most damage to were, was it Claire and Feyre, and, you know, those were women. So those are the people that she maybe sees as equals, whereas the men were sort of...
they were sexual objects to her.
They were sexual objects, and yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in that way, she's equivalent to a man, right?
Right. Men
sexualize women and only see other men as their equals. So Amarantha's just, you know, the mirror image of that.
Yeah, no, and it's definitely, I don't know if the word icon is like, feminist icon.
Yeah, no.
But she's definitely like a feminist character because she in no way thinks, she is not treated less than men. She doesn't, she's considered an equal, if not better, in her mind. Like, she's, like you guys said, her sexuality is hers. It's not something that she uses to get anything from anybody, which she has so much power that her sexuality wouldn't even need to be a weapon. Which I think is probably the most feminist thing in the world, is probably just the idea that you have so much power that your sexuality isn't even on the table. Like, as a power move, like, that's crazy.
Goals.
Yeah.
Goals.
Yeah.
There's a theory on TikTok that Tamlin and Amarantha were actually mates.
Wouldn't he have felt it?
Like, he was denying it. and he was in denial the whole time. And that's why she was so insistent, even though she had Reese, who was like, you know, hottie.
That would
with
make
the body.
sense because, like, the whole thing, when you guys were talking about it in one of the episodes, just like, and the curse, it has to be a Tuesday, and it's a 68 degrees. And, like, and so, like, why would she go through such ridiculous lengths, you know, if not for some better connection? And there's, like, tidbits of connections in the books and stuff, but, like, nothing that explains it for me on a, like, what actually happens level. Like, she cursed an entire court of people for, like, 50 years because, like, he wouldn't go on a date with her when she had a boyfriend.
She never actually punishes him, too, underneath the mountain, right? Like, she punishes Rhysand through sexual assault. She punishes Lucien through whipping. But she never actually hurts Tamlin.
She never physically hurts him.
Right.
The only thing she's willing to do to him is emotional manipulation by harming Feyre and harming Lucien.
And then also having, like, the caveat of, or you could solve my riddle. That's all, like, okay.
Did you solve the riddle before?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I solved the riddle before she told me the riddle because I'm like, I know a book when I see a book and the answer is going to be love. So, but, like, I didn't solve it. I just knew.
Yeah, fair. Your intuition tingled and you're like, spidey senses, love. All right, our final question. What are you excited for us to cover in A Court of Mist and Fury?
Just about everything, because it just turns everything on its head. You know, like, everything you thought you read in one, you're about to find out has either means something different or has, like, 18 layers that you didn't know about. And then you're about to meet a ton of characters. I'm very excited for you guys to cover the next book and then kind of talk about, you know, the characters that we felt, like, especially Tamlin, you know, and Rhysand and even Feyre. Like, how do we feel about these characters 200 pages later? Because they're going to go through quite a bit.
Yeah. When we did the deep dive on ACOTAR, we felt like, I'm speaking on your behalf, Amy, sorry. But it's like,
go ahead.
We felt like, oh, wow, this is a book that I kind of was like, a little like meh about. Like, I liked it. It wasn't earth shattering. And we walked away from it saying, oh my God, that was much better, tighter writing than I ever expected. And it's funny because going into A Court of Mist and Fury, both of us were like, love this book. It's probably one of our top books in the series. And as we've both been kind of going through it, we're like, oh, damn, we're going to be flipping the narrative on that. You'll still like it. You'll still like the book. But it's kind of, like you said, there's so much to unpack that it's already shifted.
Yeah. And I'm also worrying because with A Court of Thorns and Roses, I ended up loving that book in a way that I did not love it before.
Yes.
And for A Court of Mist and Fury, I'm actually terrified of this process changing drastically how I feel about the book, because already now that I'm doing some deep dive, I'm like, oh, as a writer, I really don't like this and I don't like this. So it's going to be very interesting to unpack.
There's one thing that I don't know if they answer. I've read 3 books. Why is Nesta so special? How did she resist Tamlin's mind control? They don't establish that anywhere else. There's no examples of humans having enough willpower to do anything else. So it's just like, they have to do better than, she was different. End of sentence. That's like, somehow Palpatine came back. And it's just like, you gotta do better.
So you haven't read Silver Flames?
No.
I don't know that it's actually answered in Silver Flames.
It's not answered, but also somehow answered. Like, I become less perturbed with it.
Yeah.
But they don't answer it. No, like, here's the thing. I think that question goes into the Sarah J. Maas multiverse.
I think so too.
So they haven't answered it in Silver Flames, but I think that that's a solid question that will be answered in the multiverse.
Interesting. And who's going to replace Ezra Miller?
Don't know the answer to that one.
Elaine.
It's going to happen, though. It's going to happen.
Well, thank you so much for letting us interview you, for being our very first guests for this postseason recap, and for just being such an amazing friend, for listening to all of the books for us and then listening to the podcast and just being one of our number one cheerleaders. So thank you for all of this, Nikole.
Totally unexpected and very much appreciated.
Yeah, thank you guys for A, having me on the show, B, being my friends, C, Jack, being a dope roommate down the hall. What's up?
Down the hall.
Yeah. But like more really is like, thank you guys for this book series. It's been very fun I watercolor, I doodle, I'm drawing my own ACOTAR fan art. I
love them.
Especially the audiobook for this series. I find it so just good, so good to create art with while I listen to it, and so that's been one of the best things about it.
I'm glad that you have that.
Yes, me too. We'll do our ACOTAR wine and paint fan art night soon.
Oh yes, love it.
Oh my god, yes.
Love it.
Thank you for listening to this special episode of Book Talk for Book Talk. We encourage you to rate and subscribe to our show on your preferred podcast listening platform.
As we gear up for Season 2, where we will deep dive into A Court of Mist and Fury, we will continue to share between-season thoughts and interviews with our listeners.
We would love to hear your thoughts based on today's conversation. You can submit your comments to our form at booktalkforbooktalk.com for a chance to have your feedback discussed during a weekly mini-episode.
If you are enjoying the podcast, visit our website, booktalkforbooktalk.com, to view our latest merch and to learn about supporting the show through Patreon, Ko-Fi, or Venmo. Or find us on TikTok and Instagram at the handle Book Talk for Book Talk.
Fall has officially started here in Los Angeles, and that means we finally get to do fall activities.
I have been counting down the days for when I can go to pumpkin patches, maybe even hit up an apple orchard, and I get to do all of it looking super cute in my Quince boyfriend sweater.
This weather is perfect for my dark academia vibes, and I'm so excited to bust out my washable silk blouse because you know I'm going to be taking pictures.
Quince is known for their Mongolian cashmere sweaters from $50. And that's not all. Quince has so many other amazing things on their website.
All of those items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands.
That includes leather jackets, cotton cardigans, soft denim. Like, my entire fall wardrobe is genuinely turning into Quince wardrobe.
By partnering directly with top factories and cutting out the cost of the middleman, we get savings as the customer.
One of my favorite parts about Quince is the fact that they only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices. And they still manage to get premium fabrics and finishes for that, luxury feeling for every item that they have.
Get cozy in Quince's high-quality wardrobe essentials. Go to quince.com/booktalk for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's Quince, QUINCE.com/booktalk, BOOKTALK, to get free shipping and 365-day returns. That's quince.com/booktalk.